Yes, I am super excited to be here in Cincy for the first time. Um, Hopefully, the weather will get better as time goes by, but I think the facility is amazing.
Alex Ayala hadn't played a single point in Cincinnati, but somehow the tournament was already talking about her like one of its biggest attractions. That was the strange part. The Cincinnati Open was preparing for another massive WTA 1000 event at the Lindner Family Tennis Center in Mason, Ohio. The world's biggest names were arriving for one of the final major stops of the North American hard court swing before the U.S. Open. The tournament had already undergone a $260 million transformation, expanding the facility and creating a center court capable of holding 11,600 fans. Everything about Cincinnati was built for scale. And then Alex Ayala arrived, not as an unknown wild card, not as a player hoping to sneak into the draw. Alex arrived as the number 17 seed in the tournament, ranked number 20 in the world. And holding the highest WTA 1000 seeding of her career, she had also earned a first-round bye, meaning she didn't even have to play during the opening round. The tournament had to wait for Alex. Her fans apparently didn't want to, because the question surrounding her was already incredibly simple: when does Alex Ayala play? And Cincinnati wasn't discovering this phenomenon for the first time. It had already been building for weeks. The first major warning came in Washington. After arriving at the Mubadala CTDC Open as the world number 28, Alex went on one of the most remarkable runs of her career, defeating a series of established stars before facing world number 3, Jessica Pegula, in the final. She won the title, claimed her first WTA Tour singles championship, and suddenly, the entire tennis world was paying attention. But the most revealing number wasn't her ranking, it was the ticket demand. Washington tournament chairman Mark Ein revealed that at least 80% of the ticketing requests they received were asking about when Alex Ayala would play. 8 out of every 10 inquiries were connected to one player. That was the warning. Then came Toronto. And Toronto turned the warning into an explosion. Tournament director Carl Hale said Alex had generated more than 5,000 ticket sales. Crowds. While her matches became major crowd events surrounded by passionate Filipino support. The stands filled with Philippine flags, the chants grew louder. Fans packed the venue to watch a player who was still climbing the rankings. And the atmosphere around her matches became impossible to mistake for an ordinary tennis session. This wasn't simply a player having a good tournament, something was following Alex. And now that same phenomenon had reached Cincinnati. The numbers were getting bigger, the stages were getting bigger, and Alex's own status was changing at the same time. The ranking said she was number 20 in the world. The draw said she was the number 17 seed. But the crowds may have known she had arrived long before the ranking officially caught up, because Alex's rise isn't just being measured in ranking points anymore. It's being measured in the people who show up when her name appears on a schedule, and Alex knows exactly who those people are. She has publicly thanked the Filipino supporters who have followed her through Washington and Toronto, people who stay up late to watch her matches, pray for her, travel to see her, and continue supporting her as she moves deeper into the biggest tournaments of the season. That changes the story. This isn't simply about ticket sales anymore. It isn't even just about how many people want to watch Alex Ayala play tennis, because ticket numbers can tell you how large the demand is. They can't tell you why people are willing to travel across states and countries, stay awake at impossible hours, wave Philippine flags through an entire match, and keep following the same player from one tournament to the next. Washington was the warning, Toronto was the explosion. And Cincinnati is where the tennis world has to find out just how big this really is. Because if the crowds are already following Alex Ayala before she has even played a single point, the real question isn't whether she has an audience, it's what exactly that audience is becoming. The answer isn't simply that Alex Eala has a lot of fans, it's that her fans have turned following her into an experience of their own. You can see it the moment she walks onto a court. The Filipino flags come out, the chants begin, and sections of the stadium suddenly sound less like a traditional tennis crowd and more like a community gathering around one player. This isn't just social media popularity. People are spending money, time, and hours of travel to be there in person. And that pattern has followed Alex from Washington to Toronto, from Wimbledon to Indian Wells, and now to Cincinnati. At Indian Wells, for example, the tournament itself highlighted the strong Southern California Filipino community that came out to support her, while reporting around her Wimbledon run showed just how quickly that following was becoming global. Toronto gave perhaps the clearest evidence of just how powerful that audience had become. Tournament director Carl Hale said Alex generated more than 5,000 ticket sales, a figure that immediately put the scale of her following into perspective. The grandstand held only around 2,800 people, meaning the demand associated with one player was already far beyond the capacity of the smaller court. Her matches were moved into the main stadium, where thousands of supporters created an atmosphere that was impossible to miss. And this wasn't simply a large crowd sitting quietly in the stands. It was Filipino supporters waving flags, chanting for Alex, and turning her matches into major events. That is what makes the Eala story different. Are tournaments creating Alex Eala crowds, or is Alex Eala bringing her own crowd with her? The evidence increasingly points toward the second one. Her supporters are spread across a global Filipino diaspora, and they are showing up wherever she plays. Even Cincinnati's own tournament organizers have described Eala and João Fonseca as having ardent, raucous fans who fly their colors wherever they land around the globe. And Alex herself has recognized what those supporters are doing. After the exhausting run through Washington and Toronto, she spoke about how grateful she was to see the Filipino community showing up and enjoying tennis, while also hoping that their support could help introduce more people to the sport. That isn't the language of a player who sees the crowd as background noise. She knows exactly who is behind her, and she understands that many of these fans are discovering a different side of tennis through her. That's why the emotional connection matters so much. These supporters are luring us up late to watch her matches, traveling to tournaments, spending their money on tickets, and following her progress from one city to another. Alex has thanked them for that support, and the relationship has become something larger than a normal player and fan connection. It is about Filipino identity, national pride, and a global community finding someone they can rally behind. And now the professional tennis world is beginning to notice it too. The crowds aren't simply something Alex's supporters talk about online anymore. Tournament officials see them. Players experience them. The WTA has documented the passion surrounding her, while Cincinnati has openly highlighted the unusual energy her supporters bring. Cincinnati didn't just get Alex Eala, it got the people who come with Alex Eala, and that is happening at a complicated moment for the player herself. Alex has just come through a 7-match winning streak, won her first WTA title in Washington, reached the 4th round in Toronto, and endured a demanding stretch of North American hardcourt tennis. She now has to recover, travel, prepare again, and get ready for another WTA 1000 with the US Open approaching. The support can lift her, but it also creates another layer of pressure. The player who once had the freedom to surprise everyone is now carrying expectations from a growing audience that believes she belongs among the best. And that is where the story takes another turn. Alex is no longer entering Cincinnati simply as a rising player with passionate fans. She's the number 17 seed, ranked number 20 in the world with a first-round bye. The audience has already arrived. Now the question is whether Alex can perform like the star they already believe she is. The crowds are ready for Alex Eala. The ranking says she belongs. Now the tennis has to prove it. That is the biggest difference between the Alex Eala who arrived in Washington and the player walking into Cincinnati now. A few weeks ago, she was still the surprise. She was the player opponents could underestimate. The young Filipina who could suddenly take down a major name and change the entire story of a tournament. Now there is no mystery about where she stands. She is ranked number 20 in the world. She is the number 17 seed in Cincinnati. She has earned a first-round bye, and it is the highest WTA 1000 seeding of her career. The ranking is telling us Alex Eala has arrived. The crowds were telling us that months ago, and that changes the pressure. Alex is no longer simply trying to make people notice her. Opponents know who she is. Fans expect her to advance. The media is watching every match more closely. and the Filipino community that has followed her from Washington to Toronto now has another reason to believe something special could happen in Cincinnati, but belief doesn't win tennis matches. Alex still has to serve. She still has to handle pressure. She still has to make the right decisions when a match turns against her. And after such a demanding stretch of competition, physical recovery becomes just as important as confidence. She has already played a huge amount of tennis across the North American hardcourt swing, and now the expectation is to keep going. While the US Open gets closer, her Cincinnati campaign also comes with a genuine test immediately. Elena Gabriela Ruse is waiting in the second round. And this is not simply another name on the draw sheet. Ruse has beaten Alex before, meaning there is already history between them, and a reason for Alex to take the matchup seriously. The crowd may be overwhelmingly behind her. But once the first ball is struck, none of that guarantees anything. And that is exactly what makes this next match so important. Can the player who has created this enormous atmosphere actually produce the tennis that keeps the atmosphere growing? Because the Eala effect can fill a stadium, but Alex still has to win the points inside it. That is the next level of her rise. The attention is no longer something that happens after she wins, it is arriving before the match. The expectations are arriving before the match. The Filipino flags are arriving before the match. The questions about how far she can go are arriving before the match. Now, Alex has to perform under all of it. And when you step back, the progression is remarkable. It started with ticket demand, then came the crowds. The Filipino diaspora, the flags and chants, the players and tournament officials noticing what was happening around her, Alex began speaking directly to those supporters and thanking them for staying up late, traveling, and continuing to believe in her. At the same time, her results pushed her ranking higher and higher until she reached the top 20 and earned a seated position at one of the biggest tournaments on the WTA calendar. Alex Eala is no longer simply trying to break into the WTA, she's bringing an audience with her while she does it. That could become one of the most significant parts of her story. Success is giving the Filipino community a player to rally behind, while her growing popularity is also introducing more people to professional tennis. For tournaments, that means something commercially important. A player who can bring her own audience creates attention that goes beyond the individual match. It can affect ticket demand, atmosphere, media coverage, and the way an entire event is experienced. That doesn't mean Alex is suddenly the biggest draw in women's tennis. It means something more interesting is happening. She has become one of the most unusual audience stories in the sport. And Cincinnati may be the clearest test yet of what that actually means, because Alex hadn't even played a point when Cincinnati became part of the Eala story. The attention arrived before the tennis. The audience arrived before the result, and in some ways, the ranking arrived after the crowds had already decided that Alex was becoming something special. The ranking says number 20, the draw says number 17 seed. But the audience says something much bigger. Alex thanked them. They followed her. Now she has to play for them. And this time, she isn't walking onto the court as the unknown player hoping to shock the tennis world. She's walking on as a seeded WTA 1000 contender with expectations on her shoulders and an entire community waiting to see what happens next. Cincinnati may be the next chapter, but the real test is waiting in New York. The question is no longer whether Alex Eala can attract an audience. Can she turn that audience into sustained success against the best players in the world? Because if she can, the Eala effect won't just be a story about crowds anymore. Treese. It will become a story about what happens when the tennis finally catches up to the phenomenon surrounding the player.